gonna give nobody none of my jelly rolls. I wouldn't give you a piece of this cake to save your soul. My mom told me today, before she went away, to be a good boy, she'd bring me a toy. I'm my mama's pride and joy. Now there ain't no use for you to keep on hanging round. I love you, but
Hello everyone and welcome to Castálio Podcast. I'm your host, Augie Maciel, speaking from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
I'm Eliezer Rezende, speaking from Pouso Alegre, Minas Gerais.
And I am Bruno Rocha, speaking from Guarulhos, São Paulo, Brazil.
Our guest for today is a Python developer currently working at Mozilla in the Services team who has written several books, both in French and English, about Python. He is a father of three, is an avid runner, a Vim user, and he works from Dijon, France. It is with a great pleasure that I welcome Tarek Ziadé to our podcast. How's it going, Tarek?
Hola, como vai? It's going well, thank you. How are you doing, guys?
It's good, really good to have you here. I guess we're going to jump right into it, only because the difference in the time zone is pretty big, and I don't want to keep it for too long, and I appreciate you taking the time talking to us. So, first of all, what I would like to know is about your current role as part of the Services team at Mozilla and what your day-to-day activities are.
All right, cool. So it's funny you're asking this question because it just changed. So back 6 years ago when I joined Mozilla to become the first Python developer in the Services team. And my job back then was to create a Python version of the Firefox Sync service. And it was really, really cool because I had the opportunity to set up all the Python ecosystem in the Services team because I was the first Python guy there. And gradually, years after years, most of the stuff in that team moved to Python. And after some time, I became an engineer manager. And sometimes last month, I was a little bit how can I say that? A little bit bored of being a manager, so I moved back to the engineer hat. So now I'm doing some coding again. So it's still around services, but now I'm focusing on working on some tools to improve the QA of our services. So throughout the year, I worked on some tools to do that, and now I'm mainly focusing on that. So my day-to-day job right now is building tools in Python and interacting with people from different time zones in the Mozilla community to try to come up with the best tools.
Oh, interesting. So I'd like to get a step back. And how did you end up at Mozilla? What you were doing before?
All right. So before I was working at Mozilla, I was working for some companies in Paris. So when you introduced me, you said I was living in Dijon. So it's not entirely the case. I live in the countryside, not far from Dijon, maybe 40 km. And I live in the middle of nowhere. The place where I live is called in French La Diagonale du Vide, which means the vacuum line, something like that. Basically means no one lives there. It's a hole. And the only way I could work and enjoy my work and stay in my house, which I like, was to do remote working. So I did that a lot for various companies in Paris. And at some point, when I got really involved in the Python community, I wanted to do something I would be able to interact with more people across the world. And Mozilla came as one of the big open source player in the community that started to get interested into hiring some Python people, and so they contacted me, and I ended up there because they were looking for a Python developer to move some of their PHP project into Python.
Oh, that's great. So I think moving from PHP to Python, we had many people that did the same thing. But yeah, I know that you mentioned about the Sync project, which was written or rewritten in Python. And I'd like to know, are there many projects in Python on Mozilla? And also, what about Rust? Are you involved with this in some way?
So Python is really big now at Mozilla. I mean, most server-side projects nowadays are written in Python. And it's not because, well, Python is great. We all know that. But I don't want to say bad things about PHP because PHP is also a good language and is doing the job. But the thing is, at some point, Python became really popular at Mozilla because they moved a few projects, a few big websites like the MDN website, the Mozilla.org website, the add-ons website to Django. And that was a really huge success, and that's how Mozilla started to become a Python shop. And from there, most of the server-side stuff that we write, where you have a thin layer of code on the top of some databases, by default, most of the time it's written in Python. We had some traction as well on Node.js, but right now I did some poll lately, and something like 60% of our projects are written in Python on the server side. About Rust, so Rust is really something everyone is excited about at Mozilla because it provides a middle ground between statically compiled language like C and a language like Python, where everything is more expressive and less painful. You don't have to deal with memory and stuff like that. So Rust is really this sweet spot between the two. And a lot of people would like to start to implement some web services using Rust, but it's not mature enough yet to do this. That said, when it comes to write small system tools, Rust is now production ready, and we have a few projects using Rust for that.
Very cool. One of the things that you mentioned was that you were now working more towards ensuring the quality of the products, right? So you said QA. I am actually a manager of QE here at Red Hat. So this topic is very interesting to me. Can you tell me a little bit about what exactly you were doing that, and how do you actually go about ensuring the quality of the product? Sure.
So I couldn't tell you everything about it because it's a new hat for me, and I still have a lot of stuff to learn, but I can tell you about what I'm involved in and what I've started to do, and I did since I joined Mozilla. So I'm focusing on improving the quality of our web services. And the first thing I've built, I'm focusing on building tools for QA people. And the first thing I've started to build was a load testing tool to orchestrate distributed load tests across Amazon Web Service. So basically, we have a tool where you can write a small Python script that does a few requests to a service, and then this very same script is able to be executed by hundreds of boxes on Amazon, and all the metrics are gathered back through an Influx database and displayed live while the test is running. And so I've built this tool, and we're working on its third version because we have some new projects where we need more load. I'm talking about the ability to run millions of concurrent users on some services, and the first version of the tool was doing like maybe a few thousand, and then the design worked more, so we moved to a better design. working on a third version that has a better design. So that's one thing. And the other thing I'm working on is trying to have a standard for all our web services. So I'm working on around the Open API 2.0 spec, which used to be called Swagger. And I'm trying to have everyone at Mozilla describing their web services through Swagger, because once we have that, we can automate some of the QA to do some work, to do some QA tests against the web services. So there are tools that are getting improved with that, and one of them is a smoke test tool, and we have a few other places where it's going to be useful. So that's my two main focus for the first part of this year.
Very nice. You mentioned it, Swagger, and I will take advantage of this to mention a library that I wrote, which is called Flasker. It's on my GitHub, and Flasker is a wrapper to write APIs on Flask and have the Swagger UI automatically generated for you. Very nice. And you were talking about the Mozilla projects you worked on, and I remember that 3 years ago, I guess, or 4 years ago, I was suffering a lot with Supervisor D, and I was trying to find something new, and I found Circles, which was a project you've been working on. Can you tell a little bit, just a little bit about what was your work on Circles and the current status of the project?
So we were struggling with Supervisor D as well, probably back at the same time you were. Supervisor D is an excellent tool, but it has a few limits. And when we wanted to extend it, it was based on some things we wanted to do differently. So we started the Circus project, and we tried to have a tool that would do like Supervisor D, but with more things. And that project ended up being quite successful for a while. We had our projects at Mozilla using it to start and stop services and stuff like that. And it grew a community. We had people from other companies using it. And so that was quite a success. But at some point, there were internal decisions at Mozilla from the ops team to move from the set of tools and Linux distribution they were using to a new one, and they decided to move to another supervisor that was built in their system. So basically, I guess the biggest difference between the benefit of Circus compared to a tool that's built in Linux distribution is that you can run many services and have a single supervisor, and you can do that in the user space and stuff like that. But since we moved most of our deployments into the cloud, into Amazon, this need was less important, and the ops preferred to move to a built-in supervisor because one VM in our environment equals to one application. So every time we want to deploy a new application, we deploy a new VM, even if the application is like a very small stuff. But the Circus project is still maintained by people from outside Mozilla, and I've tried to make sure that I gave my ownership, all work I was doing to some people outside Mozilla. So it's not dead, but it's definitely not as active as it used to be.
Yes, of course. You mentioned that. I remember that Docker is now a thing, and such kind of processes can be managed inside a Docker container. And that's pretty nice because we are all moving to a new kind of microservices architecture. And this leads us to our next question, which is about your book. We know your excellent book, which called Expert Python Programming. I have a copy here. I recommend it very much. And I read in your Twitter that you are reading a new book by the same publisher, which is called Microservices with Python. And can you say some words about that book and which kind of topics are you going to cover on the book?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for saying nice things about expert Python programming. I'm glad you liked it. And I should mention that I was not involved in the edition because when the editor asked me to do a second edition, I was having a baby, and it was I didn't have any time to do any writing. So some people picked it up and they did a great job. So I should mention that. For this new book, Pact contacted me to ask me if I wanted to do a book about microservices. And my first reaction was like, oh, I don't want to write a book about microservices because micro is just a buzzword. Doesn't mean anything. When we write services, and everything moves to a place where you delegate a lot of work to other services. So it's naturally becoming some kind of microservice architecture. So I'm not sure if I could write interesting stuff about it. But we had a lot of exchanges with people from back. Eventually, I realized that there were a few things to say about writing microservices in Python. So the first chapter is about making sure that everyone understands what's a microservices, and I wanted to remove a little bit of the buzziness of this word and make sure that people get what it is. And the rest of the book is dedicated to write microservices using Flask. So there is one chapter I just finished the other day that explains how to use Flask. And then there's going to be a chapter that will focus on good practice when you write services, how to test them, how to continuously test, build, document them using tools like Travis, Docs, and all the good things. And then the book will focus on a use case. We'll have a bunch of microservices interacting to provide a full application, which will be focusing on provided services for runners, because that's what I like to do. And by the end of the book, I hope people will understand how to manage a bunch of microservices, how not to fall into all the common traps, and how to shape the data is being exchanged between microservices. That's the hard part. How do you exchange the data between microservices? So yeah, that's roughly what the book will be about.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to buy your book. I already get the pre-order, and I like very much the whole idea of the book.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. So let's move away from the technical conversation for a while. And your personal blog in French shows us that you like running, and you were getting ready for a marathon. So I'd like to know, are you a professional runner, or is this just a hobby? And have you ever participated of a marathon before?
All right, so I'm not a professional runner. Unfortunately, no one pays me to run. If someone wants to pay me to run, I will immediately quit my job and do that. I'm 40 years old, so I doubt anyone will do it. I'm also not like a elite runner or whatever, but I'm not too bad at running, and I do run a lot. It's one of my passion. I think it combines well with programming. Like you, Bruno, I know you do some biking, so I'm pretty sure you know what I'm saying when I say that it's important to get off the office and to do some exercising, because otherwise we get nuts and we can burn out being all the time on the computer. So yeah, I run a lot, and I'm participating to a local club, running club, and there are some races, some competition and stuff like that. And the last marathon I did was in Berlin last year, 2 years ago now. So I ran this marathon, and it was a very nice experience. It was both very intense and very scary, because you just run with 50,000 people, so it's kind of crazy when the race starts. But yeah, it's a wonderful. It's something I really like.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do like running too, but not. I have never thought on participating on a marathon. I usually run for maybe 30 minutes. I think that's the most I can run. But what I do as a hobby, I do like to play tennis. So I used to run. I tracked my progress using an app. But yeah, I think for being a marathonist, we need to dedicate maybe all days of your life, because yeah, I saw some people preparing for the marathon we have here on São Paulo, and they do a lot of training, and I think you need to do just that. So yeah, it's really cool that you like doing other stuff. I think everyone should do the same thing, have maybe a sport or something that to do outside the work.
Lately, found the need to go to the gym and do some workout to keep performing on bicycle, because I started running on bicycle on some tracks here, and I needed to prepare myself. Do you do some kind of preparation? Do you go to the gym? Do you take some kind of professional training to get a better performance or running?
Yeah, absolutely. So at some point, so everyone has a different level when you run. You're born with engine size. So like some people will do a 2 hour and 40 minutes marathon. Some people will do a 4 hour marathon, and you can't help that. It's really not up to people to perform well in a marathon. But what's interesting when you run is that you're fighting yourself, your limits, and you're trying to improve what you can do. And in order to do this, at some point when you get fit, you reach a limit where you need to do some strength training, your mental training, because a marathon is long, and by the time you reach the end, you're fighting against yourself, because your brain tells your body to stop hurting yourself like that. And it's like, hey, well, crap, Tarek, why have you been running for 3 hours? I'm fed up with this. Just stop it. So you have to train. You can do some yoga. You can do some meditation and some strength training to try to improve your muscles, because that's the way to avoid some injuries and stuff like that. But again, like you said previously, when you train for a marathon, it takes a lot of time. It can go up to 10 hours per week. And it's hard sometimes to add strength training and meditation and what's not beside the running. So yeah, you have to make some choices. But obviously, it's very good to alternate and to do some cross training and to avoid doing just running, like when you race on bikes or any other sport. And that's especially important with running, because when you get old like me, when you reach 40. It's harder on the body, all the shocks on the ground. So if you can do some cross training where it's gentle for your legs, it's pretty good.
Great. I have one final question for you, which falls back into the technical side of the house, but I guess we couldn't finish this interview, without asking you about your opinion on Python 3. So just for a little bit of context, the last few times that we spoke to anyone who actually uses Python for a living, we have asked them about their opinion on the subject. We'd like to hear yours now.
Well, so I don't have a strong opinion about it because Python 3 is there. Python 2 is there. They're both great languages, and 99% of the people that are working with Python will eventually end up with Python 3 because it's just right. I mean, when I'm looking at people starting new projects at Mozilla, the biggest setback was not really the language, but it was the Linux distribution we had, because most of them were not using Python 3. We were deploying stuff on CentOS, and we had to use a very specific version of Python, and that's what's happening in most big companies. I mean, you're stuck with a specific version of a language, and it takes years to get to the next one, way after most people in the community. But since we're moving to VMs and Docker and Amazon and whatnot, nowadays it's really easy to tell our ops and people well, I'm going to build this project in Python 3.5 or 6 because I have this great async IO feature I want to use. And people will be like, yeah, whatever. I mean, if you give us a Docker, it's all good. And so that's for the Mozilla part. And for the community part, I mean, most things I'm using are already on Python 3. I mean, I remember 2 or 3 years ago when I was trying to run a project using Python 3, I was blocked because that lib was not working on Python 3. It's not the case anymore. I mean, I haven't found any lib lately that was not working on Python. So I think at this point, Python 3 should be the mainstream thing, and Python 2 should be what you use in case you don't have the choice, in case you're stuck on whatever CentOS distribution you have, or you have like a very specific lib no one ever ported and no one can understand it and stuff like that. But yeah, and for the syntax and the features Python 3 have, I guess all the async stuff are super interesting. But other than that, I don't think Python 3 has any killer feature that gives a huge incentive for people to move to Python 3. I mean, thinking about it, beside async IO, I don't see any killer feature. Python 2 is an excellent language. But again, I don't see the point to stick with Python 2 at this point if you're not forced to stick to it.
Yeah, blame on us because we have some side projects and not all of us are working on Python 3. So I have a commitment to move all my projects to Python 3 only and help the community to push the community to move to Python 3. And that's nice. So we are getting next to the final part of our show. But before going there, I just want to say a last thing for you, which is thanks a lot for your contribution for Python Core. I know you were being Python Core committer and worked a lot on dist utils, pkg util, sysconfig, and other things around packaging. So thanks a lot for that contributions. And now we are going to our last part, which is the top 5, where we are going to ask you 5 or less or more things that inspire you. And I will start asking you 5 things related to music. Can be a music, a band, a group, anything related to music. Can you rank us 5 pieces of art you really admire in music?
I learned trumpet, and I'm a huge jazz fan. I really love jazz. So I guess the 5. Well, it's hard because there are a lot of them, but I love art who is called Tyler Yarima. He's a jazzman from Toronto, so he's it's not like an old stuff. He's still active and stuff. I really love what they do. And let's see. Well, let's try to find other stuff than jazz. I like electronic music. I like Ghislain Poirier. He's a Canadian who's doing some kind of electronic music. I really love. I like Charlie Tuna and Jurassic 5, all those people. Let's see. French band, I guess. The Chinese Man, which is, like the name says, it's a French band that's doing hip-hop and a little bit jazzy hip-hop. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Now, I guess I'll take the next category, which is very close to my heart, which is books. So I don't know how much you read, what you read, but I would like to know if you want to make some suggestions or tell us books or comic books, magazines, anything that has actually inspired you.
All right. Sure. So I'm a huge science fiction fan, and there are 2 writers I love. The first one is Dan Simmons. He writes amazing science fiction books. I'm thinking about, for example, the one on the Ilium and Odyssey, which is basically a remix of the Homer, Iliad, and Odyssey happening in the future on the Mars planet, and it's really good. So everything Dan Simmons writes, it's fantastic. The other, in my opinion, the other stuff I like is Terry Pratchett, all the Discworld novels, which I picked when I was younger to try to learn English. But it's still very, very good. I mean, I love them. I didn't read all of them. There are like more than 40 of them. Terry Pratchett, unfortunately, died last year or the year before, but he was really prolific, and he wrote many books. And if you have never to read the disc novel, it's fantastic. Comics. Comics. I read a lot of comics, and there is one artist I really love is Warren Ellis, who writes graphic novels and novels as well. And this guy is nuts. He's like I don't know. He has a prolific mind, and he's writing a lot of story about post-apocalyptic world and stuff like that. There is another one called Ed Brubaker, who writes noir, noir graphic novels. Stories around crimes and stuff like that. I'm thinking about one happening in San Francisco called Sins of the Crime, which is very good. And this guy also wrote some superhero comics, but not like the classical superhero. He wrote a story about Superman, which is like a depressed Superman, so it's pretty cool. So how many is that? Philip K. Dick, of course, which I think wrote the best science fiction book out there. If you've never read a story from him, it's pretty good. I think that's it.
Cool. That's a really good list. And in order to finish the top 5, I'd like to ask you about movies or maybe TV series, something related to visual art. What do you like?
Okay, but that's a French stuff. But I think it's translated in English. It's available in English. It's a documentary called Free to Run. I've seen lately, which is about the first people that started to organize races in Boston for the Boston Marathon. First girl who ran the marathon, and it was forbidden. And it's all the stories about those people. So it's called Free to Run. It's fantastic. If you like running, I highly recommend this one. And if you like running and trail running, there is all the DVDs that were made by Kilian Jornet, the Spanish runner. He's trying to visit all the summits in the world. So he did a few of them already, and every time he's doing he's doing a movie about it. So the series called Summits of My Life. And the last one was really heartbreaking because he went to Nepal when they had the earthquake, and the earthquake happened just before he was going to shoot his new summit expedition. So instead of doing a DVD about running, he did a DVD about the people that was trying to survive, about all the people from the mountain community that was trying to help local village and stuff like that. So this is a really good one because it's focusing on people living in Nepal and what happened to them when the earthquake happened. I'm not sure. I think all of them are about the same soup, so I'm not sure if I like one more than the other. But yeah, I guess that's good enough.
Well, everyone, this concludes the episode with Tarek, and I would like to once again thank you so much for taking the time and meet us today and answer all the questions and provide all these really cool information that you provided us. And we are going to include a link to everything that was talked about in this episode in the show notes. So please take the time to look at the show notes. It will be written in English and in Portuguese so that both of the audiences that we usually have can follow along. And if you have any questions for Tarek, just leave a comment there as well. And Tarek, thank you again. It was really great talking to you, and I hope to meet you Sunday.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor. I hope that will give people the idea of trying Python in case they don't know the Python. And mucho obrigado for everything. And I wish you guys a pleasant beginning of the year.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Ain't gonna give nobody none of my jelly rolls. I wouldn't give you a piece of this cake to save your soul. My mom told me today, before she went away, to be a good boy, she'd bring me a toy. I'm my mama's pride and joy. Now there ain't no use for you to keep on hanging round. I love you, but I've got to let you down. My jelly roll is sweet.